Alright, so let's break down the actual lick that Guthrie plays in this video. I'm going to just go through this whole thing note for note, and then we'll go back and we'll break down a few of the little parts and show you how I think about, or how I break it down and visualize this so it's helpful for my own playing. So it starts on the 12th fret of the E string, and I think he picks every note in this. I kind of do some pull-offs. I'm not very comfortable alternate picking everything. So I pull off the first two notes from the 12th fret to the 8th fret on the E string. So that's, he picks the two notes. And I actually pull that note off too. So it's whatever you want. If you want to play it just like he did on the video, I'm almost positive he picks every note. I know he does the first section at least. So 12th fret to the 8th fret on the E string, then 12, 10, 9, back to 12, back to 9, back to 10. So it's... Then what he does is he goes to the G string and he goes down from the 9th fret to the 8th fret. So it's... And then he does this kind of chromatic movement where it's... He goes 9 to 8 on the G string. Then he plays the 11th fret on the D string. Then he slides that pattern down a half step to the 7th fret on the G string to the 10th fret on the D string. So that's... So it's... Then he just walks down the scale to the... Actually, he walks down chromatically there. And that's just 4 notes in a row from 10, 9, 8, 7 on the D string. So that's... Then he just walks right up the scale from the 7th fret to the 9th fret to the 10th fret on the D string. Then he goes from the 7th fret to the 9th fret on the G string. So... Then after the 9th fret on the G string, he goes back down to the 10th fret of the D string, and he climbs back up the scale from the 7 to 9 on the G string. Then he goes up an arpeggio. He starts out from the 9th fret of the G string, he goes up a half step to the 10th fret of the G string, then he goes to the 9th fret on the B string, and the 8th fret on the E string. So the whole thing is... Then he walks down the scale from the 12th fret, 10th fret to 8th fret on the E string. Then he goes chromatically on the B string from 11, 10, 9. So the whole thing is... Then he goes down an arpeggio, which is the 8th fret, barring the 8th fret on both the E and the B string. So you go from the E, 8th fret, to the B string, 8th fret. Then he goes from the 10th fret of the G string to the 9th fret of the G string. So... Then he goes down another kind of like arpeggio. It's basically the 9th fret on the B string to the 9th fret on the G string. And he walks down chromatically from 9, 8, 7 on the G string. So that is... And the whole thing is... And then after that, after he goes down those two arpeggios, he walks down the scale from 10, 9, 7 on the D string, and then he slides up a half step to the 8th fret on the D string. So, and he plays that note twice. He slides up to the 8th fret, and then he plays it again. So it's... Then he does that pattern again where he does the half step movement of this shape. So it's basically the 8th fret that he just played twice on the D string to the 11th fret on the A string. Then he goes down a half step to the 7th fret on the D string to the 10th fret on the A string. So that whole thing is... Then he just goes chromatically down from the 10th fret, 8, or 10, 9, 8, 7 on the A string. So that whole thing is... And then he goes from the 10th fret to the 10, 8, 7, 6, 5 on the E string. So that whole thing is... And that's it. Alright, so now let's break down a few sections of this lick so that it can become maybe more usable for you in your own soloing. This is something I do all the time when I transcribe a solo or I transcribe like a lick or an idea or something that I see. I try and break it down into useful parts because I would never, and I'd never use this whole lick from beginning to end. Start on the first note and end on the last note. If I ever went to a club and I saw a guitar player doing something like that, or if I did it, I want somebody to shoot me. But really, please don't shoot me. But if I ever saw somebody do that, and then I went back and I saw him do it again, and I saw it was a recurring thing where they had a bunch of licks that they literally started at the same spot and ended at the same spot, I'd probably not go back to see that player that much. Just because it's licks are a weird thing. They're ideas that you try and learn because you're trying to learn the technique and you're trying to learn the notes that you're hearing that sound so cool. But often a 2-note or 3-note lick is more useful than this huge long run like we just did. And Scott Henderson talks about this a lot, actually. I learned this in music school, but I learned it from a teacher that was heavily influenced from Scott Henderson. And he actually studied under Scott Henderson at MI. And what it is it's better to take 3-note motifs, 3 or 4-note, or really small chunks, and actually work them and really start incorporating that idea into a solo and building on that, as opposed to just playing a lick, then improvising a little, then playing another lick, and just inserting these things, because that's what it comes off as. That's what it sounds like. Scott Henderson, if you haven't seen the video, he's got a melodic solos, I believe is the video. It's an REH video. It's quite a while back. I don't know if they still make those things, but if you can, get a hold of that because it describes this perfectly and it's a great lesson. Anyway, so what I took out of this was I took a few little sections and I'm trying to incorporate these into my own playing. And the first section that I saw was the beginning, which was up to that arpeggio. Now that's still a really large lick. That's, again, larger than I would actually play in a solo, or most people that do this kind of same thing. But I wanted to take that pattern, and now, instead of doing it in melodic minor, this is something that you may want to try, is take it in something that's more familiar. So if you're playing E minor, like E minor pentatonic or something, take natural minor, take that, and actually use that same phrase. So the phrase starts out with a pull-off, Then it goes to the next string and it walks down 3 notes. It goes back to that first note and pulls off between those two, skipping the middle note. So you have... and goes back to that note. So in E natural minor, you'd have... right? Same thing. And you can mix that into pentatonic stuff. Right? It works. So now it goes down a chromatic thing. So right? So that thing you can do again up here in E minor, natural minor. But then you land on this note, which I'd probably want to go down to this note. So you add an extra chromatic note. So if you're thinking, like, if you're seeing things in pentatonics and stuff. So if you land on that note, you have... and that's the same pattern as this. But you don't have this melodic minor thing going on. So instead of this, you have this. Now you can walk up the same thing, the same as this. But you're thinking E natural minor. Then you can go up an arpeggio. Whatever arpeggio you want to go up. This would give you the flat 5. Or you can do that. So you have... Now that, again, is a very long lick. You may want to just take that beginning section and just do... Now, that all I'm doing there is just... I'm thinking about this shape and then trying to get back into, say, E minor pentatonic or something. So you have... right? You went right back into E minor pentatonic. Now, again, you want to really try and incorporate this in a way where it's not... you're not just inserting it, or it doesn't sound like you just did a little blues thing. You don't want to, and in fact, Guthrie talks about that in this lick that he does on that video. Because melodic minor are the same thing. You don't want to phrase and then all of a sudden do this melodic minor idea or something like that.